The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction, filled with the representatives of 847 species and the soft hum of translators, when Ambassador Kethar of the Zepyrian Empire walked to the speaking platform with the confidence of a man who thought history had already chosen his side. 3 assistants followed with tablets and sealed documents. From the high central dais, Elder Morak watched in silence, for black eyes fixed on the young ambassador with the tired attention of someone old enough to recognize disaster before it spoke. "Honored council members," Kethar said, his voice echoing through the chamber, "the Zepyrian Empire comes before you today to announce a great expansion of our territory." A few delegates shifted. Territorial announcements were common, but something in Kethar's tone tightened the room before he even reached the point. "We claim the Sol system and all its planets for the glory of our empire," he declared. "The primitive species living there will be relocated to suitable worlds where they can serve useful purposes." Silence hit so fast it felt like impact. Dr. Yelandra, chief archivist of the council, dropped her data pad. Her tentacles changed from calm blue to pale white. Across the chamber the Altarian delegate began typing so quickly his crystal fingers blurred. Restricted historical databases opening under emergency authority. Warning lights flashed across his console and fear became visible. "Ambassador Kethar," Elder Morak said slowly, "perhaps you could clarify which system you mean." Kethar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "The system containing the planet Earth, of course. The one inhabited by the creatures that call themselves humans." A brittle sound came from the Vectari representative as his crystalline body shifted from clear to deep red, the color his species reserved for certain death. Ambassador Tekanal of the Hegmony world surged to his feet, fur standing on end, claws fully extended. "Are you insane?" he roared. Kethar barely glanced at him. "I am suggesting we take what belongs to us by right of superior strength. The humans are barely beyond their own atmosphere. They have no meaningful military force. They cannot resist the might of the Zepyrian Empire." "Sit down, Tekanal," Morak said quietly. The bear-like ambassador obeyed, but his claws remained unsheathed. Dr. Yelandra raised a trembling tentacle. "Elder, permission to access the historical files for full council review." "Denied," Morak said at once. That answer chilled the chamber even more than Kethar's declaration. The Quintar delegate pulsed orange with alarm. "Ambassador Kethar, has your government consulted the available records?" "We have reviewed all necessary military intelligence," Kethar replied with contempt. "The humans possess no technology that threatens our fleets. Their largest ships barely reach the edge of their own system. They are insects." A whisper moved through the Sage Collective delegation. "He speaks only of military intelligence." Then Elder Morak stood. The hall went still. "Ambassador Kethar, I will ask you one final time. Are you absolutely certain your empire wishes to proceed with this action?" "Absolutely certain," Kethar said. "The Zepyrian Empire has conquered 43 species in the last century. Our war fleets have never known defeat. One primitive world will not change that." Morak looked at him for a long moment. "Very well," he said. "The council acknowledges your empire's declaration. We will not interfere." Kethar blinked. "You will not support our righteous expansion?" "The Galactic Council will not support this action," Morak replied. "Nor will we oppose it. This matter is now between your empire and the inhabitants of the Sol system." The chamber exploded into whispers. Then Morak delivered the sentence that broke what remained of Kethar's confidence. "Any species that wishes to evacuate personnel from Zepyrian space may do so immediately. The Council will provide emergency transportation." "Elder," Kethar said, "surely that is an extreme response to a simple territorial expansion." "The session is adjourned." Morak struck the ceremonial gong 3 times. Representatives rose at once, already contacting home governments, already arranging evacuations. Kethar stood alone on the platform as the hall emptied around him, confusion replacing certainty because no one had tried to stop him. Deep beneath the chamber in the restricted archives, Dr. Yelandra worked while emergency packets assembled across her console. Elder Morak entered behind her. "Should I prepare the memorial archives?" she asked softly. "Yes," Morak said. She hesitated. "How long do you think they have?" "Their fleets will reach Earth within 2 standard months," Morak replied. "After that, I estimate the Zepyrian Empire has perhaps 6 months of existence remaining." Yelandra's tentacles turned nearly colorless. "Should we warn them again?" Morak looked into the darkness of the archive vault. "They've already been warned," he said. "The records exist for a reason. Every species on this council knows why certain worlds are left alone. Now the Zepyrians will learn why." Dr. Yelandra worked alone beneath the council chambers while Nexus Prime pretended the day was over. In the underground archive vault, Cold blue files floated around her like captive ghosts. Most council members would never see them. Some did not know they existed. That ignorance had protected the galaxy for 2 centuries. Tonight it would not be enough. Computer, she said, begin playback of file classification Ultra 7. Earth integration period. Year 1. Earth appeared in the darkness, blue, green, peaceful. That was always the first lie. The following records document first contact between galactic civilization and the species known as humans. Warning. Content contains graphic military footage. The first invaders had been the KTOS hegemony, rulers of 400 worlds, a power strong enough to break moons. They had looked at Earth's crude ships and fractured world governments, then written the kind of report arrogant species always wrote before they vanished. Species designation, human. Basic electronics. Limited space capability. Military capacity negligible. Recommend standard conquest protocol. Estimated resistance duration, 72 hours. Yelandra opened the battle footage from Luna. The beginning was exactly what the hegemony expected. Human ships died in waves. Plasma fire ripped through them faster than they could maneuver. Hegemony warships advanced in perfect formation, enormous and patient, their shields bright against the black. Around the moon, the first human defense line collapsed almost immediately. Then the timestamp moved forward. Battle plus 6 hours. The human ships were still smaller. Still burning. Still losing. But they were no longer moving like prey. They attacked from angles no doctrine recommended. They used debris as cover. They absorbed losses and kept changing shape. Yelandra pulled up intercepted communications and a voice tore through the static. All stations, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Pattern analysis complete. Their weapons recharge every 47 seconds. Their ships turn slowly to the left. Adjust attack runs accordingly. Yelandra paused the image. This was the real turning point. Not victory. Not rescue. This. While being beaten, while watching their own people die, the humans had started learning. By hour 12 their attack patterns had changed. By hour 18 their ships carried weapons they had not possessed at the start of battle. Salvaged components. Captured systems. Improvised designs built in active combat and passed from ship to ship before the hegemony understood what was happening. Human forces modified weapon systems 17 times during active battle, the archive reported. Adaptation rate exceeds all known military databases. She watched the Hegemony Command Council on day 3. Their generals looked less like conquerors now and more like beings trying to explain a nightmare. The humans appear to be adapting to our tactics. Impossible. Nevertheless, we have lost 18 capital ships in the last day. Yelandra fast-forwarded through the weeks that followed. The pattern never changed. Humans learned. Humans rebuilt. Humans took enemy tools apart and returned them sharper. Then the final footage opened over the Hegemony home system. The human fleet there no longer resembled the battered defenders of Luna. These ships were larger, stranger, layered with weapons made from human engineering, captured Hegemony hardware, and designs the archive could not identify. Yet the most unsettling detail was not their strength. It was their restraint. They cut the home defense fleet apart with surgical precision. No civilian bombardment. No theatrical cruelty. No extermination. Only exact, overwhelming force directed at military targets until surrender became the only thing left. Then the transmission arrived. We surrender unconditionally. We request mercy for our civilian populations. Fleet Admiral Chen answered without pause. Surrender accepted. Civilian populations will not be harmed. Military forces will be disarmed. Production facilities will be dismantled. Your species will survive this war. And they had. The KTOS still existed. So did the Devourers of Sakan. So did the Jean Collective. 3 powers had attacked Earth. 3 powers had ceased to exist as military threats. All survived under human protection, alive enough to remember exactly what their aggression had cost them. Yelandra authorized emergency data packets to the Council. The records were clear. Humans did not fight wars the way other species fought them. They studied them from inside the fire. They adapted faster than terror could stop them. They turned every enemy weapon into a future advantage, and when they won, they stopped short of genocide. That was the part younger species never understood. Defeat by humans was not death. It was survival with the lesson burned in. Add personal note, Yelandra said softly. The humans do not fight to destroy. They fight to teach. The lesson they teach is that war has consequences. Some consequences last forever. Data packets launched into the galactic network. But Yelandra already knew the warnings were late. The Zepyrian fleets were moving. Soon the galaxy would watch the lesson being taught again. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the center of the Solar Defense Council command room with the Zephyrian ultimatum burning above the table in red light. Immediate surrender. Relocation from all human colonies. Compliance within 72 hours. No one looked shocked. What settled over the room was colder than fear. It was recognition. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen said, the Zephyrian Empire has demanded the removal of our species from our own worlds. General Marcus Webb laughed. Several officers stared at him. Webb wiped one eye and shook his head. Sorry, Admiral. It's just another species that doesn't know its history. Chen gave a single nod. Then let's educate them. She opened a reply channel and let Webb speak. This is General Marcus Webb of the Solar Defense Force responding to the Zephyrian ultimatum. Message received. Response is no. Earth Defense Force is mobilizing. Any Zephyrian vessel entering Sol system will be treated as hostile. We strongly recommend you reconsider. End transmission. Activate Protocol 7, Chen said. A captain near the rear stiffened. Admiral, 7 is reserved for extinction-level threats. They threaten to relocate our entire species, Chen replied. That qualifies. Across human space, ancient systems woke up. On Luna, railguns buried beneath armor and regolith began drawing power for the first time in decades. The moon trembled as targeting systems aligned with deep space approach vectors. Colonel Martinez watched the charge curves climb. All batteries entering ready sequence. Ammunition fabrication at maximum output. One officer swallowed. Sir, we'll have enough kinetic rounds to level a continent in 6 hours. Then prepare for 12. In the asteroid belt, mining ships received sealed orders that turned industry into warfare. Captain Singh of the Prospector unlocked dormant weapons mounts, reinforced bulkheads, and targeting packages hidden inside a vessel built to crack stone. Within hours, ships designed to split asteroids were being refitted to split fleets. Mining lasers became anti-armor cutters. Mass drivers built for or became ship killers. Belt command, Singh said, staring at the power readings, these weapons are insane. The answer came back at once. Prospector, you are now armed for capital ship engagement. Mars lit next. Orbital defense platforms that had waited in silence above the red planet unfolded toward deep space. Each platform could take out a small moon, Lieutenant Hayes reported. Commander Park nodded once. Good. The enemy won't be bringing small ships. Then Chen transmitted the code that changed everything. It had not been used in 50 years. Far beyond charted borders, human exploration vessels received the recall. On the bridge of the Wanderer, Captain Thompson read the message 3 times before speaking. All hands. We've received a Code 7 military recall. We're going home. And we're going home ready for war. His chief engineer checked systems upgraded with things human science alone had not invented. The Sigma Draconis modifications are still stable, Patel said. And the weapon systems are definitely not standard. Good, Thompson replied. Signal the others. We're bringing everything. All across human territory, peaceful infrastructure dropped its disguise. Communication satellites unfolded into weapons arrays. Stations masked as mining hubs revealed layered batteries. Civilian factories switched from agricultural machinery to arms production. Transport ships became troop carriers. Colony pilots loaded combat patterns. Farmers requested heavy weapons training and got it. On New California, Governor Harrison watched production surge beyond peacetime logic. We maintain peace through strength, he told his council. Now we remind the galaxy that peace was a choice. Back on Earth, reports flooded Admiral Chen's command center. Hundreds of thousands of ships. Millions of trained personnel. Defense grids active across every colony. Deep space fleets already turning home. General Webb stepped beside her. Full readiness in 48 hours. Outer exploration groups need 6 weeks. Chen opened a private channel to Nexus Prime. Elder Morak appeared immediately. We received the ultimatum, she said. Humanity will defend itself. We have no quarrel with the rest of the galaxy, but we will not relocate. I expected nothing else, Morak replied. Will you conduct this war according to established protocols? Chen's voice never changed. We will not target civilians. We will not destroy inhabited worlds. We will not commit genocide. But the Zephyrian Empire's military capacity will cease to exist permanently. Morak closed his eyes for a moment. The Council is already preparing humanitarian aid for Zephyrian civilians. We remember how these conflicts end. When the channel closed, Chen stood before the star map of the Sol system and called up every file on Zephyrian doctrine, weapons, tactics, and command structure. Begin tactical analysis, she said. I want every weakness they have. Estimated completion time, 12 hours. Chen looked at the stars beyond the glass. 12 hours to understand an empire that had spent centuries at war. For most species, that would have been impossible. For humans it was enough. Emperor Zether stood on the bridge of the infinite glory and watched the Sol system grow across the main display like a prize already won. Behind his flagship stretched the largest war fleet in Zephyrian history. 500 capital ships. 2,000 escorts and carriers. Enough troops to crush worlds. Enough firepower to erase civilizations. Around him, officers moved with ritual confidence, their motions polished by a century of conquest. This was what victory looked like before the first shot. This was what certainty sounded like before reality arrived. The primitive humans will witness the true power of the Zephyrian Empire today, Zether said. Fleet Admiral Vorish stepped closer, careful with his tone. My lord, forward scouts report unusual activity. The human defense grid appears more extensive than our intelligence suggested. Zether waved the concern away as if it smelled bad. We have destroyed fleets 10 times larger than anything these primitives can assemble. Their species barely occupies one star system. What possible threat could they pose? Vorish bowed, but the tension did not leave his face. Zether opened a system-wide channel. This is Emperor Zether of the Zephyrian Empire to Human Military Command. You have one final opportunity to surrender peacefully. Submit to our rule and your species will be relocated to suitable worlds where you can serve productive purposes. The reply came from Earth Defense Station Alpha in the voice of a woman who sounded so calm that several Zephyrian officers frowned at once. This is Admiral Sarah Chin, Solar Defense Force. Emperor Zether, you have entered Sol system with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw your forces. This is your only warning. Zether laughed. Admiral Chen, you face the might of 1,000 worlds. Your tiny ships cannot posse. He never finished. Alarms detonated across the bridge. New contacts bloomed across every tactical screen. First hundreds, then thousands. Human reinforcements dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation around the Zephyrian fleet, so precisely timed it looked less like a rival and more like a trap closing. What is happening? Zether snapped. Vorish stared at the instrument wash, all composure gone. Human reinforcements are arriving from multiple vectors. These are not local defense ships. They were not in our databases. The tactical officer's voice shook. They are not using standard human technology. On the main display, the new fleet assembled with a precision even Zephyrian veterans could not ignore. The ships were larger than the exploration vessels humanity had supposedly sent beyond its borders years earlier, but wrong in ways the eye felt before the mind understood. Hull lines that made no engineering sense. Weapon mounts built around principles Zephyrian science had never solved. Drives that left distortions in space after they stopped moving. Analysis report, Vorish demanded. Preliminary scans show human vessels carrying weapon systems of unknown origin. Energy signatures do not match galactic standards. Some appear to exceed current theoretical limits. Zether felt the first crack in his certainty. Impossible. Humans are barely past chemical rocket stage. A new voice entered the channel. This is Captain Thompson of the Wanderer Deep Space Exploration Fleet. You're partially correct. We didn't develop all of this technology ourselves. Some we found. Some we traded for. Some we took from species that made the mistake of attacking our exploration vessels. Another voice followed. This is Captain Patel, Sigma Squadron. We've spent 8 years beyond your maps. We've seen things your empire never imagined existed. A third voice joined them. And we brought back everything worth learning. The bridge of the infinite glory went very quiet. Fresh reports flooded in. Weapons faster than light. Shields that ignored expected physics. Engines that turned distance into a suggestion. Countermeasures for only a fraction of the human arsenal. Then the most disturbing report arrived. My lord, the humans have weaponized their entire solar system. Artificially modified asteroids. Hidden platforms. Overlapping kill zones. Luna, Mars, Earth orbit, the belt. It was not a planetary defense network. It was a machine built to punish invasion. Vorish studied the tactical map with the expression of a soldier watching a masterpiece aimed at his throat. Their coordination is impossible. Thousands of ships, perfect alignment, no visible confusion. Admiral Chen answered him herself. Every vessel in this system is crewed by explorers, miners, traders, and researchers. Every human civilian receives basic military training. We've been preparing for this conversation for 200 years. You're lying, Zether said. Civilian populations cannot possess military effectiveness. Captain Thompson answered this time. You're thinking like someone who separates civilians from military. We don't. Every human is a potential soldier. Every human ship can become a weapon. Every human settlement is a fortress. Zether bared his teeth. All ships. Prepare for battle. Deploy fighters. Charge main weapons. We will show these primitives the power of true military force. Admiral Chen cut across the fleet one final time. Emperor Zither, you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal. After that, we will consider your fleet hostile and respond accordingly. We do not retreat from primitives. 20 seconds. Vorish grabbed the Emperor's arm. My lord, perhaps we should consider. 15 seconds. The Zepyrian Empire does not surrender. 10. The bridge became a countdown chamber. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The human fleet opened fire. The human fleet opened fire, and in the first second Emperor Zither understood that every assumption he had brought into the Sol system was already dead. This was not the desperate charge of a cornered species. It was not fear. It was not chaos. It was the kind of violence only possible after long preparation, cold study, and absolute confidence. Human ships struck from every vector at once, not in a wave but in layers, each movement timed to the heartbeat of the fleet around it. Exotic weapons flashed across the dark like wounds opening in space. Beams ignored shield geometry that had protected Zepyrian warships for generations. Kinetic rounds arrived from angles that made no mathematical sense. Entire escort screens vanished before their captains understood they had been targeted. On the bridge of the infinite glory, alarms became constant sound. Return fire, Zither roared. They did. Hundreds of Zepyrian ships unleashed the force that had broken nations, empires, moons. The display should have filled with wreckage. Instead it filled with misses, deflections, distortions, and impossible survivals. Human vessels slipped between kill zones as if they had known the firing sequence before it was entered. Some simply were not where sensors insisted they had been. Others took impacts that should have split them open, then kept coming with their formation unbroken. Report, Admiral Vorish snapped. Forward battery groups 3 through 9 destroyed. Carrier screen collapsing. We've lost targeting lock on half the enemy fleet. Our shield harmonics are being bypassed. The bridge crew spoke in fragments now, language breaking apart under pressure. On the main display, centuries of Zepyrian doctrine were dissolving in real time. Focus fire on their command vessel, Zither shouted. Destroy their leadership. The reply came back from multiple captains at once, overlapping with panic. We cannot identify a command vessel. That is impossible. Another voice cut in louder, strained. Every ship appears to be operating independently. Admiral Chen answered across open channels, calm enough to feel insulting. Emperor, you are still thinking conventionally. We don't use central command. Every captain is authorized to make tactical decisions. Every crew knows the mission. Destroy one ship and 5 others adapt before the wreck cools. The next 12 minutes broke the fleet. Zepyrian carriers tried to launch fighters and lost launch bays to railgun strikes from Luna before the pilots fully cleared the hulls. A battlecruiser division turned to reinforce the left flank and ran into mass driver fire from the asteroid belt, the projectiles large enough to punch through armor and continue through the ships behind them. Mines that had not existed on any approach chart lit up beneath retreat vectors. Mars platforms opened fire with the patience of executioners, each shot removing another capital ship from the map. And through all of it, the human formation kept changing. They learned while killing. Vorish saw it before anyone said it. Human ships that encountered a new Zepyrian countermeasure adjusted on the next pass. Weapons that failed once returned tuned differently. Defensive screens shifted frequencies after a single exchange. Mining vessels, ugly and overbuilt, punched holes in cruisers with industrial tools converted into military nightmares. Deep space explorers used weapons no Zepyrian officer could even name. Civilian freighters moved troops, ammunition, and sensor data through the battle with such efficiency that there was no safe place left to strike. My lord, Vorish said, and for the first time since Zither had known him, his voice carried something close to surrender. This is not a fleet. It is an entire civilization at war. Zither ignored him. He kept issuing orders because emperors did not know how to do anything else. Reform on my flagship. Protect the carriers. Break their center. Push toward Earth. Each command arrived too late. Each command described a battle that no longer existed. One by one the great ships of the Zepyrian Empire died around him. Some split open in white fire. Some fell dark and drifting, neatly crippled instead of destroyed. Some tried to run and discovered that the human defensive perimeter had no gaps. The system itself had become a weapon, and every road through it led deeper into the kill box. After 2 hours, Zither stopped believing in victory. After 3 he stopped believing in escape. After 4 hours and 17 minutes the battle was over. The infinite glory floated alone. Its engines were dead. Weapons offline. Internal fires sealed behind blast doors. Around it drifted the broken remains of the greatest war fleet the Zepyrian Empire had ever assembled, wreckage turning slowly in the light of a star his empire had come to claim. Thousands of human vessels surrounded the crippled flagship in perfect silence. Then Admiral Chen's voice returned. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen to Zepyrian flagship. Prepare to be boarded. You will be taken into custody for war crimes proceedings. Your crew will be treated according to galactic conventions." Zephyr stared at the ruined tactical display. "War crimes? You threaten genocide against an entire species," Chen said. "That is a crime under galactic law. Don't worry, Emperor. You will survive this. Your empire, however, will not." Magnetic clamps struck the hull a minute later. As human boarding parties began to cut their way inside, Zephyr finally understood the worst part. Humanity had not answered his invasion with everything it had. This had been a demonstration, not a war. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the former Emperor Zephyr stood in a grain field on the agricultural world of New Zeals and guided harvesting equipment through rows of engineered wheat where war banners would once have flown. The armor was gone. The throne, the bridge, the fleet, all of it had been taken from him with a speed that still felt unreal. In their place were simple work clothes, rough gloves, soil under his nails, and the quiet rhythm of a life built around growth instead of conquest. Administrator Zephyr, Supervisor Martinez called as she crossed the field with a tablet in one hand. "Your production numbers look good this season. Your teams are exceeding targets again." Zephyr shut down the harvester and climbed down slowly. "My people adapt quickly when survival depends on it." Martinez studied him, not with mockery, not even with triumph, which somehow made the moment harder to bear. "And how are you adapting?" Zephyr looked past her toward a group of Zepyrian children running between the crop lines. They were laughing. No alarms. No drills. No officers shouting doctrine into their ears. Just children under an open sky. "I spent 50 years learning how to destroy," he said. "Now I am learning how to grow things. It is harder than I expected." Martinez waited. "My people are safer now," he admitted at last. "Safer than when we controlled hundreds of worlds." "The transition is always difficult," she said. "You've seen the reports from the other species that went through it." "Yes." Zephyr rested a hand on the harvester frame. "The KTOS, the Sakin, the Jean Collective. All of them survived you. All of them prospered after losing everything they once believed made them strong." Martinez's expression did not change. "Not everything." That answer stayed with him after she walked away. Later, on Nexus Prime, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council was full again, but the mood had changed. The old arrogance was gone from the room. In its place sat calculation and unease. Elder Morak stood before the chamber. "Council members," he said, "today we discuss the aftermath of the Sol conflict and its implications for galactic peace." Holographic displays opened above the central floor. The battle data did not flatter anyone. Human ships had outmaneuvered, outthought, and outclassed the Zepyrian fleet so completely that several delegates turned away before the sequence ended. But it was not only the scale of the victory that unsettled the chamber. It was the pattern beneath it. Dr. Yalandra, now speaking as Chief Council Advisor, activated a second layer of star maps. "Honored delegates," she said, "the human fleet that defended Earth was not built in secret by one isolated world. It was assembled over decades. Human exploration vessels have spent the last 50 years traveling beyond the regions most civilizations consider survivable. They made contact with unknown species. They studied extinct civilizations. They defended themselves in territories no one else wished to enter. What returned to Earth was not merely a fleet. It was accumulated knowledge." A murmur moved through the chamber. The Alaran delegate lifted his crystalline hand. "Are you saying the humans acquired technology beyond current galactic standards?" "In some cases, yes," Yalandra replied. "In others, they learned principles that allowed them to build new systems of their own. They did not become powerful suddenly. They became powerful patiently." Another delegate rose. "Then why conceal that strength for 2 centuries? Morak answered before Yalandra could. "They did not conceal it," the elder said. "The records existed. The warnings existed. Most species simply saw human restraint and mistook it for weakness. That landed harder than the battle footage." For a moment no one spoke. Then the real question began moving through the chamber. If humanity could dismantle an empire in hours, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? The hall fell quiet again when Morak lifted one hand. "I believe," he said, "that humanity intends to answer that question themselves." When Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the main display in the Galactic Council chamber, no one saw a victor enjoying triumph. They saw a woman in a worn uniform, calm, precise, and completely untouched by the panic that had spread across the galaxy since the fall of the Zepyrian Empire. Council members, she said without preamble, humanity has received many questions regarding our response to the Zephyrian invasion. I am here to provide answers. The Quintar representative floated forward first. Admiral Chen, your forces demonstrated capability far exceeding known human technology. Many species are concerned about the implications. Concerned? Chen asked. Good. You should be. The words did not rise. They did not need to. For 200 years, she continued, we have maintained peaceful relations with the galaxy. We traded fairly. We shared medical knowledge. We contributed to culture and science. In return, we asked for one thing only. Leave us alone. The chamber stayed silent. The Zephyrian Empire chose to ignore that arrangement. They threatened to relocate our entire species. That was unacceptable. A Vectari delegate shifted to deep blue, the color of focused curiosity. Admiral, your exploration fleets possess technology our best scientists cannot explain. How did you acquire such capabilities? Chen's expression hardened slightly. For the last 50 years, our people have been exploring the dark spaces between stars. We found ruins left by civilizations that died before your current order existed. We made contact with species your databases do not contain. We defended ourselves in regions you consider uninhabitable. Every piece of technology we used was earned. Every weapon was tested against enemies you have never encountered. Every defensive system was built fighting battles in places you have never gone. That answer unsettled the chamber more than any threat could have. The delegates had feared hidden strength. What they were hearing was worse. Human power had not come from secrecy alone. It had come from experience beyond the galaxy's edge, from years spent surviving where others would not travel. Then the Korvoxy delegate stood. Young. Aggressive. Angry enough to mistake a room's silence for weakness. Admiral Chen, he said, your demonstration against the Zephyrians has created a dangerous power imbalance. Some species might consider this a threat to galactic stability. The hall went still. Chen did not move. She let the silence harden around the words until even the Korvoxy seemed to realize he had stepped somewhere dangerous. Delegate, she said quietly, are you suggesting that my species represents a threat to galactic peace? He hesitated, but pride carried him forward. I am suggesting that such overwhelming military capability concentrated in one species could be problematic. Several long seconds passed. When Chen spoke again, her voice remained calm, but the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Let me be very clear. Humanity has no interest in conquering other species. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your governments. We do not want your obedience. We want to be left alone to continue our research, our exploration, and our lives in peace. Then she leaned slightly toward the camera. However, any species that threatens human civilians will learn what the Zephyrians learned. We do not conquer. We do not occupy. We do not commit genocide. But we will defend ourselves, and that defense will be absolute. Elder Morak stepped forward before the chamber could break apart again. Admiral Chen, the Council appreciates your clarification. However, the concern raised about the balance of power is not without significance. Chen looked at him, not with disrespect, but with something older and colder than diplomacy. Elder, there is no balance of power. No one breathed. There are species that leave humanity alone, she said, and there are species that no longer exist as military threats. Which category a civilization belongs to is entirely its own decision. The Korvoxy delegate flushed with anger. That sounds remarkably like a threat. Chen's face did not change. It is not a threat, she said. It is a statement of historical fact. Ask the Katos. Ask the Sakin. Ask the Jean Collective. Ask the Zephyrians. They all learned the same lesson. She paused, and when she spoke again, every word landed like a final ruling. There are old species and there are aggressive species, but there are no old aggressive species that chose to fight humanity. Then the transmission ended, and the chamber was left with nothing except silence and the terrible feeling that the humans had not come to boast. They had come to make sure everyone understood. The silence after Admiral Chen's transmission felt heavier than the battle footage. For several long seconds, no one in the Galactic Council chamber moved. Then the sound returned in fragments. Translators whispering across frequencies. Consoles lighting up. Delegates sending urgent messages home. No one spoke with the easy confidence that had filled the chamber before the Zephyrian disaster. They had all heard the same thing. Humanity did not want the galaxy. Humanity did not need permission. Humanity wanted only distance, and the species foolish enough to cross that boundary did not die. They survived long enough to understand exactly what they had become. Elder Morak rose slowly from his seat and let the chamber settle. Council members, he said, humanity has once again demonstrated why they are left alone. I strongly recommend that every government represented here review its historical archives in full. No one objected. The Altarian delegate's crystalline skin had dimmed to a frightened gray. "Elder," he asked, "if what we witnessed at Saul was not humanity's full capacity, then what would a true human war look like?" Morak looked at him, and for the first time that day the ancient being seemed genuinely tired. "Representative," he said quietly, "I pray we never learn the answer." That prayer did not last long. 6 months later, the Korvoxy Dominion announced that it would test humanity's resolve by attacking a human research station near its border. The message reached Nexus Prime during a routine trade summit, and the effect inside the chamber was immediate. No outrage. No debate. No disbelief. Only the cold, resigned movements of species that had already seen this lesson before and knew exactly how it ended. Several delegates began preparing memorial texts before the emergency session was even called. In the archive vault below the council chambers, Dr. Yolandra stood before a new classification file while the first reports flowed in. Her tentacles moved over the console with practiced precision. This work had become familiar in the worst possible way. A new aggressive species. A new declaration. A new warning ignored. Somewhere above her, council members were discussing sanctions, evacuation corridors, humanitarian aid, and civilian relocation procedures for a people who did not yet understand they had already lost. Yolandra opened the historical register and began a new entry. Year 247 post-integration, she dictated. The galaxy continues to produce species that mistake human restraint for weakness. Humanity continues to provide educational experiences for such species. The lesson remains unchanged. Some choices cannot be undone. She paused, then added the final line with more force than she intended. Some species learn from history. Others are absorbed by it. The archive accepted the entry. For a moment, Yolandra stood alone in the blue light, listening to the low hum of old records and older mistakes. Around her floated the preserved deaths of empires that had all made the same calculation. Human worlds looked peaceful. Human trade ships looked ordinary. Human diplomacy sounded reasonable. Human patience looked soft from a distance. That had always been the trap. Humans were not peaceful because they lacked the power for violence. They were peaceful because violence, to them, was a tool to be used only when every warning had failed. But when it was used completely. Not to exterminate. Not to conquer. To end the argument so thoroughly that no one involved could ever mistake the answer again. Above the archive vault, in the endless traffic lanes of a living galaxy, new civilizations were rising beneath unfamiliar suns. Somewhere, on a world no one had mapped yet, another young species would eventually look outward, discover the quiet spread of human space, and think it saw softness where there was only restraint. It would notice the farms, the research stations, the trade routes, the silence, and it would think the same fatal thing others had thought before it. Easy target. Yolandra closed the file and sealed the vault. The galaxy was vast and time was patient. So was humanity. That, more than their fleets or weapons, was what made them terrifying. They were willing to wait for history to repeat itself. And they were very good teachers.